Say a sentence or something.
Okay, I'll say the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
I kissed a Nork and I liked it. The taste of his Mogor chapstick. I kissed a Nork just to try it. I hope my ally friends don't mind it. It felt so wrong, it felt so right. Don't meet up in love tonight.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lion's Pride Tavern podcast number 39. Tonight we talk about our raid weekend. But before all that, let's start off with introductions. I'm your host, Fafford. I play a Dwarven Beastmaster Hunter in the awesome game World of Warcraft. Next up, we have Jobui.
Hi, I'm Jobui. I play a Worgen Frost Mage.
And then there's Lorelei.
Hi, it's Lorelei, your Night Elf Fury Warrior.
Epistle from up north.
How's it going, eh? This is Epistle. I play a Draenei Protection Paladin.
And Tapachino's with us tonight.
Hey, it's Tapachino, your Night Elf Restoration Druid.
All right, guys. Fantastic. Glad to have you back. Episode 39. That's exciting. One more for 40.
Yay.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it's been that many, but it really has.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, if I remember right, our anniversary is coming up, and I forgot to look to see which week it was, but I think
I thought it
one
was
year-
August.
was it August?
Yeah, I think
it
that's
was-
when we had our first one recorded up here, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was towards the late summer rather than the
yeah,
early summer.
You're right. August 14th is our 1 year anniversary. So we still got a couple more months. I thought it was 52 weeks for a year, but I know we skipped a couple of weeks.
I'll make
Some-
cake for everybody.
Somebody had to go hunting. All right. Well, let's jump right into it. Let's talk about this weekend's raid-ish.
Right?
How well we
Oh,
did.
gosh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
Denial
Jobui?
of raid attacks.
Right. So Friday, I mean, it started off really well. And we were going to take out Elisand and Gul'dan on normal, and we did that just fine. Went lickety-split right through those two, and then we went to switch to heroic, and we got stuck in a time warp something. There's basically a lot of us were walking in place and couldn't go through into the instance because the instance server crashed horribly, and we were trying to recover our tunes from the oblivion that we were descending into there. And after a little while of trying of getting ourselves into the heroic raid, we gave up and called it on that night. So we only had the two bosses down on our Friday night raid and ended it early. And but then on Saturday, everything was working again, and we took down Scorpirion, Chromatic Anomaly, blew through Trilliax with no trouble, went on to Star Augur, took down Star Augur, first pull, Croesus, first pull, Tichondrius, first pull, and we ran out of time at that point.
Yay!
That was
Yeah,
a good
I mean,
run.
it was a
Mhm.
clean run. I think if we'd have had like no technical difficulties on Friday, I think we might have been taken out High Botanist at least on Saturday if we hadn't hit that technical hiccup.
Well, definitely, because last week we had 2 full days of 2 hours for raid, and we got to the same spot we did this weekend, and we were an hour short. Because we
Right.
only did, well, I don't even think it was an hour's worth of play, was it?
No, we
No.
started a little late. We had a little bit of a pistol had a little technical difficulty at the beginning of the fight.
It was a Friday night technical hangover, actually. It was my system still had me in between places, and I had to spend a good 10 minutes, maybe it was even longer than that, trying to get us
About-
running. Now, I started trying to solve the problem before official raid time, but it definitely took us into our normal start time.
About 15 or 20 minutes in we started a little late, but we did really well. I think a lot of that is just our group is getting more powerful, and they're also getting used to the mechanics of these fights to an extent that we're getting through them just a lot easier.
Well, yeah, one time I think I heard Bronzebeard yell something like, "No, I can't be beat by Fafford."
Yeah, I did hear that.
And
I
I,
was like,
I heard
what?
and I heard crying. It was so sad.
Aw.
Okay, no, it didn't get that bad, but yes, it did offend his
More like-
sense of self.
More like weeping.
Is that
Well,
the
I have-
time when I died because I was shocked? It's like, what? Fafford's being in Bronzebeard?
I didn't even know I was. I was just going for it, you know. Too funny. Yeah. So
Good job.
Friday. Thank you. Friday was the glitch was kind of funny because as our listeners know, we're doing night hold, and when you go down to start, you got to open the gate and then go in through the instance swirly mist. And so because it was locked out, we'd open the gate, we'd run in and run in place, and the gate would close. And there we are between the gate and the swirly mist. So it would time out, and with me anyway, it was timing me out, and it would kill my game. And I'd log back in, and you can see all this on the live stream of our raid for Friday night. So I'd come back in, and as soon as I'd come back in, you're facing, the grates behind you, so you're facing the swirly mist. And so you can't back up and just use your back button because the gate's closed. And so you got to turn around and then hit the gate and get it to open and run out. And it just wasn't quite working that way. You turn around and then you go in the mist. And there you sat because it wouldn't load because of the problem. So I really wish we would have had a priest.
Oh, yeah. Pull me out.
I managed it like first I went in and then I found myself, like you're saying, I was facing away from the gate and the gate was closed, and you were trying to open the gate for me, but it wasn't ever open when I managed to actually like become, like before I'd appear. And so I turned around at one point and I opened the gate and I thought I had stepped out, but then it started to do the load thing. And so the next time when I loaded up, the gate was like facing me because I had turned around the previous time. And then I blinked out of there into the hallway, and then it still loaded me like I had stepped through the gateway. And then the next time I came out, I was just standing in the hallway. It wasn't in the gate anymore, but it was such a pain.
It's like that old Gene Hackman movie from way back when, No Way Out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty frustrating, that's for
It's
sure.
like Groundhog's Day.
Mm-hmm. I remember this. It used to be, I don't know whether it was when we were back in Northrend or days earlier, that there would be all kinds of glitchy problems with dungeons and raids, and it was, sometimes quite frustrating. This just reminded me of how, in all the raids we've been covering, I'm not sure we've had that kind of difficulty or technical problems. Like, most of that is pretty well sorted out and solved. I think Blizz has been doing a good job of keeping that, keeping totally on top of that. So I'm curious to know what that glitch was about.
I think somebody
Yeah, what
spilled beer
happened?
on the server.
Must be.
Yeah, I don't think they actually ever did say, and I didn't go search in the forums for it, but I don't think they actually ever did say on the Twitter feed, on Twitter CS, or BattleNet CS. Well, maybe it's Blizzard CS.
No, it's
anyway,
Blizzard CS
yeah,
on Twitter.
Blizzard CS. They just said they knew they were having problems, they were working on it, and then it was, I don't think they ever said anything after that.
Now, what's this site? I'm not sure all of our listeners would know what it is or how you can use it.
Well, it's not a great site. Well, I mean, some people love it, but it's Twitter. And if you follow at Blizzard CS on Twitter,
stands
they
for
post
customer service.
Yeah, then they will post information on that Twittery thing with the bird.
Yeah, you'll get twit. Is that what you'd call them? Twit
No,
announcements?
tweets.
Tweets. I like twits better.
Yeah, they'll tweet
Mm-hmm.
some information at you occasionally.
Yeah. So, but they're usually behind anyway, so we know about the problem before they tweet it.
Yeah,
Or
and
tweet it.
just for our users out there, you don't actually have to sign up for Twitter to see what Blizzard CS on Twitter is saying. You can actually look at it without having to sign up for Twitter. So if you're still interested in looking but don't want to sign up for Twitter, you can do that.
But if you do, you can subscribe to us. because
Well,
we're on
that's
Twitter
worth
now.
it.
We're not listed as Lions Pride Tavern because I haven't created a Twitter account for them, but I've created a Twitter account for my handle for my YouTube videos. Which, if you go and watch our live stream or listen to our podcast, where you can see Donna Bell drawing a beautiful picture of somebody, some raid WoW player on YouTube, then you can see the link there and go to it. All right, so let's talk about our last boss, our progression boss, just briefly before we go on to our boss summaries that we started last podcast. That we'll talk about, the bosses and what we actually do with each of our roles. So let's just briefly talk about Tichondrius, our progression boss. So, Jobui, what did you notice? We either did good or we could use some improvement on.
The thing I thought we did really, really excellently in that fight was, we have the method down for popping those brands. I mean, we have that pretty much down. I didn't see any flubs on that really at all. That was silky smooth. The one area I feel like we could use a little bit of improvement on is in the bat phase, actually, where we're getting a number of them down, but it's a little messy in there still. I think we can get more of the bats down and get more of those purple dots on the ground for people to pick up that buff a little bit better than we are. But I mean, it's not absolutely essential, but I think we could stand a little improvement in that area.
Well, I noticed that things come a lot faster, especially the green lightning or laser beam that comes out from the boss. I found that for me, it works easiest if I just keep moving the entire time during the bat phase. Because every time I stop is right where that stupid laser beam's at. And then I get hit by it, and you get stunned, and you take a lot of damage. And if you've already got damage, it'll just kill you instantly. But I found just moving, and then if I see the greenies, because it's so hard to see that little green bubbly stuff on the ground where the beam's coming. Because I'm already moving, I just keep moving through it, So that seems to work best for me. Anybody else got any ideas? Lorelai?
I do the same thing. I just try to keep moving, and that's where I use my whirlwind pretty much most of the time, so that I can hit anything there and anybody can step into it. Yeah, because even with me, that if I get hit with that in heroic, I can take a lot of damage.
Yeah, I do a very similar thing, but I stay back a little bit. I try and stay more to the outside, but that's something a ranged can do. I just try and stay back from the group, but I try and keep a blizzard going the entire time wherever the bats are.
So you do your AoE?
Yeah, with blizzard it's a cast and then it just goes for about 5 to 10 seconds or something like that. And so I just cast it, and wherever the bats currently are basically clumped up, or where I think they'll be clumped up, and I just put a blizzard down there to try and hit the bats, because I'm busy running around trying to dodge stuff,
I was really that was my first time actually getting to that point because of my power supply issues last week. So it was the first chance I got to get that far in that boss, and frankly I was like, oh my god, this stuff comes down really fast. I wasn't expected to just keep hitting and hitting, so I think I was just doing the same thing, just running and trying to stay out of that and just throwing heals down when I could. I wasn't even thinking about trying to pick up one of the swirlies. It was just move, heal.
Oh, that's right, because her computer wasn't working the weekend before, and
Right.
that was our first time taking it down.
Yep. So
Yeah,
it
it
was
is very
pretty
fast.
interesting, that's for sure.
How about Epistle?
Well, what I really appreciate about these discussions is sometimes it highlights things you've been thinking about or things you might want to pursue a little more about, because I've heard rumors from somebody, namely Bronzebeer, that a group he was running with handles that phase in a different way. I've been trying to figure out, is there a predictable pattern? Are there safe zones? Anything like that we can use? Because it is pretty fast. It is kind of flying by. And I've got to pick up all the ads at the same time as everyone's running in different directions, which is, a tanking nightmare. And we have to pick up the debuffs. So I'm thinking there must be some way to create a little more order in that chaos, either moving together or moving into a certain area. I'm sure we can figure out some pattern to work that more efficiently. I'm sure there's something that Blizzard has built in there for us to figure out. I mean, we're getting by okay, but it looks like a really chaotic run from here to here to here to here to here, and try not to get hit by stuff and try to hit stuff and try to pick up a buff phase, which is it just is a little too chaotic for Blizzard to design. Usually, when I see that, there's some kind of pattern within a pattern that you can figure out. So I don't know if it's moving together. Now I'm just dying to go and do some research. Maybe some of our listeners have some ideas or have done something that's helped them through that particular chaos phase. I mean, we're getting through it. We're living through it. It's just there has to be a better way to do that.
Then every man for himself,
Yeah, exactly.
or woman.
Yeah.
See,
I
I
don't
was-
think I've
Or
ever
tree.
seen it come right up against the wall, and either wall on the side. I tend to like to keep over to the sides if I can, and I've never noticed it right up against the wall.
Oh yeah, it does.
It does.
As
Okay.
a ranged, I can definitely, because I've been all the way to the wall shooting, just shooting multi-shot off to kill the bats, and that was in normal, but I still got hit with it. But in normal, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
No, I just think it's it's very controlled and very, a very elegant dance up until that point, and then it's chaos. Then it's like a mosh pit.
Yeah, I thinking about that part of it, it's just it's the only thing I can think of that I've heard other groups do that we don't do is that they prioritize who gets the swirlies on the ground first in some groups, where the players with really strong AoE will pick up the swirlies first because you get the damage buff immediately as soon as you hit the swirly, and so then they can kill more of the bats and get more of the swirlies on the ground faster for everybody else. But I don't know that that's necessarily something that we want to try necessarily, really.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like the solution somehow.
No,
I mean, we
it
did
doesn't.
get him down, so
Yeah,
you
and it wasn't a close thing this week either. Like last week, it was tight. We were right on the brink of berserk. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a tight thing. This week, it wasn't. I mean, we still had a good amount of time left before he was going to go berserk. The DPS was higher this week than it was previous week, and so I don't know. It's chaos, but it's kind of interesting.
I still think that's we can attest that literally because we keep improving every week. I think we can attest that to all the other bosses that we're downing, we're getting gear from, and we're trading gear and so on and so forth. And I think that really helps because the higher the item level, the more your DPS goes up.
the better your stamina, the better the heals. Yeah, definitely.
I think another thing that's contributed too is that a lot of our players are starting to hit their first ranks of Concordance of the Legion Fall.
That
And
too. Yeah.
that's a big boost. I mean, that's a big boost.
Tap, did you have anything to offer? I know it was your first attempt, but anything you saw that maybe you think something might work better or?
Well, it seemed like organized chaos. And again, I was just running all over the place. I like that most of the fight was similar to where we do it on normal. And when we had done it 2 weeks ago, we were running to the boss when we had that mark on our head. Someone would be calling out,
Yep.
okay, you go to the boss. And then and then I missed last week. And then this week, you guys had figured out, well, we'll just go to the person with the mark on their head. And I thought that seemed very, logical and seemed to keep some of the chaos down. And it was easier to heal that way too, because we're not worried about, running, especially if one of the healers, for instance, has that mark. We're not having to worry about running around and stopping our heals. So I think, that probably helped a lot as well.
Well, I can't speak for Lorelei, but I know when I would get that mark and Jobu would call for me to go up there and burst it, and I'd go up to the boss, the melee kept running away from me. They're like, oh no, here he comes, run away.
Yeah.
Well,
Get
I
away,
think
he's
some that aren't
marked.
used to that know that, but I know I probably ran away when I got because I wasn't there that night, but I can speak to the other nights. Um, Sometimes you get the I can't remember what it is right now. I'm having a brain dump. Uh, you get your infection, and you
Oh,
have
yeah.
to run to the other side of the boss.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Sometimes we get like 3 people at one time when we get more into the fight.
yeah, and it could also be just, like instinctual, don't stand in the fire reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the way we're doing it now, which is a great way of doing it, is we just stand still and let the group of people that don't have it come to us, and then what is it? Your third phase is when you're just automatically holding on to it.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
third phase, we're just having everybody hold theirs. I think I popped mine by accident in the third phase. I went behind a pillar and I got too close to the rest of the group, and I think I popped one. But I mean, we're just holding it in the third phase, or trying to at least.
I think
Uh,
that is working well for us, though. I think it's pretty smooth and people are understanding that approach, and it's easy to do.
yeah.
And how about the ads as far as the tank? Because I know you usually run out and take the ads out, don't you? Or is it Durag?
Well, usually I do, but this last time, just the way that things were sequenced, he ran out and did it for a change. So it's still quite workable. We're finding ways to make that work.
We're getting
People
down.
also, yeah, and people aren't as vulnerable. I think we lost maybe 1 or 2 people last week to one of those extra ads. But I mean, I can say clearly the damage is better because when I run out as a tank, we have the 3 little blobs. Those go down. They just melt so quickly now. So that we're not having any real problems with those. The larger ads too, I think people are taking them down so quickly and not getting sort of 1 or 2 shotted, and I think that's helping a lot.
Yeah, I've also noticed a pattern with that, and that's just from calling it. The timing seems to be that I end up saying, pop circle, pop star, kill the ads. And then that seems to be like the pattern, and people
It
are like
is.
kind of picking up on that pattern.
Yeah, and now we're getting used to it, so now we know what to do.
I
It's
was going to
almost
bring that. No, go ahead.
it's almost kind of nice to have the Searing brand there because it reminds the players that they got to switch to ads to a certain extent.
Yeah, I was going to say I think that really helped because I think that's why that's why I brought it up. I think the ads were going down smoother because you were saying it.
Yeah, I did. Well, it's important because if we don't get those down, then then we start getting lots of damage, and then we can't pop the brands, and I noticed that pattern. It's just, and I try to do it right away. When they come up, I'm like, okay, health is good. All right, pop star, pop circle. Whichever one I see first, really, and then and then I'm like, kill the ads because the ads are coming out right at that moment
Well,
every time.
the thing is, if the ads don't go down, we get cascade failure because then we can't do a tank swap, and then the ads start healing the boss, and it's just a gong show if we don't get those ads fast enough.
Oh
I
wow.
love the verbal cues. I just think they're fantastic to have that because everybody's so concentrating on what they're seeing, what's going on. That it's nice to have that verbal cue in your ears. It's like pop this and pop that and kill this and kill that. It's just
I
it's very helpful.
And this week and this week RNG was rather nice to me on calling that fight because I did not get Carrion Swarm on me. I did not have the plague the entire fight. So I didn't have to like run to the other side and try and get in a line and pay attention to who has the brand and blah blah blah, So it was
Yeah. And
I
then the
could
other thing I think with the carrion plague is that I don't recall anybody having to say, "Hey, you've got the plague, go to the other side." I
Yeah, I
think
don't hear
everybody's
that either.
just so, yeah, everybody knows, you got to go over there and get in that line. I think that went really smoothly too.
Well, I think what it is as we progress, those mechanics that were giving us difficulties to begin with now become second nature.
Yep.
Yeah. People are paying more attention to what's going on around them. That's a good thing too.
Yep.
I also think they don't like it when we tell them, "Hey, you've got this. You got the plague. Get to the other side. What are you doing? Get away. Go to the other side." And they don't like it when we yell at them to tell them to do stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
All
Get
right.
away
Well,
from me.
yeah, we did really well. I think the progression went really well. So I'm looking forward to next week. What's your predictions? Where do you think we're going next, Joe Bowie?
I think we're gonna. I think we're gonna get all the way through High Botanist, and I think we're gonna start on Spellblade next week.
Ooh.
Oh
Ambitious.
boy.
It's going to be a fight.
Yeah, he's pushing. How about you, Lorelai? Where do you think?
I think we can do it. I think we have to get some good practice on Spellblade, and once we get that, the strategies down, and everybody knows what to do, it'll get easier.
Okay, Pistol. You think we're gonna make it there too?
Well, I think we'll get there. I think the tanking perspective, I think we'll be fine. I think Darg and I have the dance down. It's not going to change substantially for us. It just the pace is going to be faster, but I think we're ready for it.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you right now. Melee's gonna have to get used to, and everybody's gonna have to get used to the difference with the ads this time. I think there's gonna be a lot of people stuck in little ice blocks before they learn not to. They learn to keep moving and don't stand still.
Yeah, it is a complicated fight. The thing is, I think we'll get to Spellblade. I'm not saying we'll take down Spellblade. I
Yeah,
think
it's
we'll
gonna
get
take a
to
couple of
Spellblade
times.
and get a puller or two, and then at the end of the raid, I'll be telling them, okay, now go watch videos on how to do this
Yeah.
fight for next week.
Definitely gotta watch a video for that one. That helps a whole lot.
I
Okay.
can already see myself starting to look at him now. I actually want to go leave right now and go, oh, I want to see that fight.
Yeah, if you're listening, fellow raiders, go ahead and go take a look now. Otherwise, I'll
for
tell
all
you to
the
do it at
last
the end of
bosses.
next week's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's pay special attention to where we get to stand and
Yep,
what
definitely.
damage we're going to be
Oh,
seeing. And
Damage is gonna be horrible. Healers are gonna really be working.
There
Yeah.
you go, Tap.
yeah, I
Get
actually
your
started looking
get
at my
that whip
spec
out.
again.
Get those healers in line.
Yep, here we go. Oh, I
Have
don't need
your
a whip. I was just teasing last time.
have your tranquility
We have a
order
great
prepared.
And don't
So
forget, you can always work in with the warriors. We've got always at least 2 of the commanding shout, which will help with the heals. I know Bronze and I do use it on our own, but we can always save those for certain times. And if you need those with your tranquilities, we can always help you with that.
yeah,
Oh,
there you
maybe
go.
we should talk about that at some point
Yeah, there you
before
go.
we start.
Yeah, with the healers, coordinate that.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah.
Because you guys,
the
the DPS has got like heals and stuff that it would be very helpful for us to learn what those are.
I just get this image of like a campfire with a bunch of druids sitting around it talking about their tranquilities, and then like 2 burly, armored up warriors sitting around the campfire going, "Why am I supposed to be here?"
Because every so often we need you to yell.
All right, so I hate bringing them up again, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the Goblin Goldcast guys, Mac and Dex, just because they're the ones that gave us this idea, and I heard back from them because we invited them to raid with
Nice.
us, right? Last
Yep.
podcast. So Mac actually got a hold of me, and we had a nice little conversation. And I hate to say it, but they're horde.
Oh,
Oh.
Oh, dun dun dun.
Wait, what?
so
No.
disappointing.
No
Yeah.
offense against the Horde, of course. It's
Yes,
just that
there is.
we're not.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
I could point something out here though. If they're not raiding and they want to, and they're sitting on hordes of gold, could they not use those to buy tokens and switch realms?
Dun, dun,
Mac-
dun.
Mac is
Yeah, I
actually
don't-
working on Dex with that, but I think Dex is the one that has a problem with switching to Alliance. We'll find out. We'll find out because they said they were going to work on a couple of tunes and they would love to come with us, but it's just going to take them a little bit, so they're not going to make it, real soon. But we'll see how they do.
Yeah,
And just so they know, I mean, it's going to be a lot easier for 2 of them to switch to Alliance than 25, 30 of us to switch to Horde.
Oh, I'm not switching my tune. No.
Yeah, no,
I've done that.
no.
I have been there and done that and not doing it again.
The other day here in my little small town in the mountains, I saw somebody driving around with a horde sticker in the back window of their car, and I yelled out the window, "For the Alliance!" as I drove past them.
Well, speaking of that, what I was going to say is that when they do finally get here, we gotta initiate them correctly with the proper secret code word, which is for the blank, and fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Are you
I
gonna
actually-
let us on what that
I
is?
thought you were going to
or-
say
Alliance for the alliance.
Oh.
Come on, Tap.
I was
I
like,
thought
wait,
you
there's
say
a secret
you've-
code word? Nobody told me
Yeah,
that
like-
secret code word.
Yeah, I didn't
It's
know.
Come on,
use
how
your
much would
rainbow
we get?
generator.
That's what I thought he was going to say, punt the marmot or something.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like,
Oh yeah, so Dex and Mac, don't forget, if you do come and join with us, you must have a rainbow generator. It's almost, and you should have a puntable marmot, but you don't have to
Everybody
do the
has a
puntable marmot.
puntable
Yeah,
marmot.
everybody's usually
Yeah,
got
but
one,
you gotta
so.
have the rainbow generator.
Gotta have the rainbow generator, so if you don't have that, you gotta go out and quest for that and get it. It's pretty easy to do, especially at the level you're at. But we always do the Care Bear stare. And for the listeners that don't know what that is, go to my website with the YouTube channel, and I've got it listed there. Or you can go to our Lions Pride Tavern Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Lions Pride Tavern. And I have it on there. The video link is there, so you can watch what the Care Bear stare is all about. And that's where you hear the reference of Jobui telling me to step to the left.
yeah. Yeah. Which he fails utterly at stepping to the left.
Well, it depends on what you call a fail. I succeeded in stepping to the left. I just pulled the boss.
He's like FedEx. He can only move to the right.
Right.
All right, so Dex and Mac actually Mac's the one that did it. He gave us the idea of talking about the bosses and what specifically we do in our roles as we deal with these heroic bosses. So tonight, because we talked about the first two last week, tonight we're going to talk about Trilliax and Star Augur. And we're going to talk about Trilliax first, and we'll have Jobui start off with what the ranged would do and don't do during the Trilliax fight.
Okay, so obviously, as usual, at the beginning of the fight, I'm going to pre-pot, and I'm going to pre-cast, a big damage spell. In my case, Ebon Bolt, before the boss gets pulled, and so that it hits right as the boss gets pulled. And then now our tanks usually move the boss to another position, so then I try and get in position, and then I fire off all of my big damage things like Icy Veins and my Frozen Orb, and I start into my normal rotation. But I usually hold off on initiating that rotation until they get the boss positioned. That way, because I've had too many times where I throw my Frozen Orb out, and then they move the boss, and the Frozen Orb misses, and it just goes through the wall, and then my DPS just gets all messed up. So then I stay back on the outside ring, because there's like a big ring in the center of the room, and I stay in the outside ring about 15 to 20 yards away from the boss, and I do my damage out there. And every now and again, I'll get a swirl on the ground underneath me that I have to move out of because it's akin to standing in the fire. And so I move around, but I try and keep all those swirlies on the outside of the room so that the center is clean. Because we will get there later in the match or in the fight, and I want that area clean. So then, shortly after we start, then there will be the food distributed around the room. These green cakes, and it's partially my job, especially as a mage who has good mobility. I try and get a cake that's on the far side of the room, if possible. If they're already gone, if somebody's already gotten them, then I grab one that's nearby. Or if they're all gone before I get to any of them, or before I think about it, then I wait till the second round of cakes, because we're going to get a second round of cakes soon. And then I make sure that in every cycle I eat a cake. That's crucial. Then the boss will jump to the center of the room and do the spin around thing. And I usually, since I'm already standing back away from the boss, and the boss faces where they started the jump from, or where Trilliax starts the jump from, it's pretty easy for me to get to the side, and I try and plan it out because I know he's going to jump. So I try to run to there's a ring around the middle kind of thing. which is about 10 yards, maybe 15 yards out from the boss. Really, I think it's about 10. And then I try and get to that ring on the side of the boss, and then I just move around the side of the boss as the beams come out and avoid getting hit by the beams. And I don't move too fast, because I made that mistake before and died. So I just move as necessary to stay 90 degrees on the side of the boss, away from that beam. And I just watch, and if it switches directions, I switch directions. And then as soon as that phase is over, I get back out to the outside ring again, so I'm not dropping any of those pools of the gunk in the center of the room, and follow the boss around. The other thing that I have to do during that fight is occasionally I'll get the debuff on me that is like it's a pulsing debuff that puts a circle around me, and that will make the if I put any of the cleaner bots that come out to clean up the puddles of goo that drop or the little swirly things on the ground, if you stand near them, makes them work faster and move faster. So I follow those guys around, and I'll stop DPSing just to get those guys to clean up more, and try and avoid other players because you'll damage them. Other than that, it's pretty much a rinse repeat fight. It just keeps doing that over and over again. If I do see one of the bots going to explode, I will try and get to it if I'm nearby. So click on it and explode it, and that's pretty much it for me. That's it.
Yep. Jay, the only thing I would add is that the big difference between normal and heroic on this one is that you can only eat one cake. As soon as you get it, you can't pick up another.
If you can, always get a cake per cycle of the boss.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, Lorelei, from a melee perspective, Trilliax.
Melee's got to really pay attention on this fight because there's just stuff all over the place that you have to avoid. We have to avoid the pools that drop on the ground around randomly around the room, especially on the boss. So you're constantly moving from one side of the boss to the other side of the boss. Sometimes you have to run around. I don't think we're supposed to be standing in front of the boss, so I don't usually do that. I try not to do that anyway. I will pick up cake if there's cake near the boss. I'll also help explode the bots if there's bots around the boss. I will use my heroic leap to get out farther, especially if we're low on ranged for the fight. And I don't mind doing that. I'll do what I need to do. When the boss goes to the center, that's where I pay more attention to my DBM. And usually about 1-2 seconds before the countdown stops, I'm already moving to the center. And that way I don't get caught with that beam, because if that beam will just one-shot you. And again, 90 degrees, like Jobui said. Melee can step back a little bit. His hitbox is fairly big because that beam is a lot wider than it looks. And a lot of melee dies. I died a lot in the beginning with that fight because I thought I was far enough away, and then he just turns and you just get hit in the face with it. So I just hit it as much as I can and stay out of stuff on the ground, eat cake when I can, and I'll take a bot that's nearby and use a cooldown or a potion or a health stone, whatever I have, to help me get out of that. And that's what melee does.
I would toss into that just a reminder to all of our players, all of our DPS out there, that in that phase where he's spinning around, it's much better if you're trying to do DPS and it's getting you killed. It's much better for you to just run in a circle and not do a single point of damage and stay alive than to get hit by that beam. So if you need to stop DPSing to not get hit by the beam, do that.
Right. That's where whirlwind, I do that because that comes up all the time. And I just go around the circle in whirlwind, and I can get a little bit of damage in that way.
Yeah, I usually try and save a frozen orb to throw on him when he's in the middle so that I can get off some ice lances and stuff. But seriously, if you're getting killed by the beam because you're trying to DPS, just stop DPSing and stay alive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you literally, if you're having problems doing both at once, just stop. I don't know about healers. Maybe even stop healing during that time. But definitely, if it's giving you a hassle, we'd rather have you alive than not alive, because not alive doesn't, now we lost all your DPS for the rest of the fight. So, yeah. Epistle, your
Yeah.
views on Trilliax.
Yeah, well, lots to say on this. I think just on the healing point, you may want to keep the tanks alive or be tempted to as a healer, but I wouldn't worry about that because usually we save our self heals for that phase. But generally speaking, yeah, avoiding that beam is absolutely essential. I think we crossed from not succeeding to succeeding a few weeks back when we just said just follow the tanks, because Darg and I had to work out our dance on that beam, because we also at the same time have something on us called arcing bonds, which means if we get too far away from each other, we start doing damage. So we can't be on opposite sides of the boss. We can't be too many feet across, or we'll be taking a lot of damage, and then we will be toast. So we had to work out where we were going to stand, how we're going to stand, how close. So we were at that 90-degree rotation several steps back in order to survive the fight. So in our case, I think just because the tanks are already marked, I think it gives a good read for people to know where to be, just to follow those marks. I think that simplified it for some people in the fight. Otherwise, from a tanking perspective, just a couple mechanics to be watching for. As soon as you pull the boss, he's going to be doing something called Arcane Slash. And so Lorelei was saying, don't be in front. You definitely don't want to be. He will do 1.7 million arcane damage, and it will be split between 2 targets. You don't want to be one of those 2 targets because you can't mitigate it in the same way that a tank can. So there's a swap back and forth between the two of us, because we'll die. So it's a back and forth tanking thing. What we generally do is we pull the boss right away, and if you think of it like a clock, we start at 12, we move to 3, and sometime around then, he'll then jump back to the middle, and then we do that kind of rotation, avoiding beam dance. The trick for a tank then is, where do you go after that? You'd think it makes sense to go back to 3, but sometimes the floor is really messy, or sometimes there's a cake, or who knows whatever else is going on. There's a bit of chaos, and so it's always been a judgment call as to where we're going to go. Sometimes we'll end up at 6, sometimes at 9, and sometimes the beams turned you right around, so you're back at 12 already, and so going back to 12 and then rotating to 9 counterclockwise is the way to go. So you really have to improvise as you go along, and we're quite comfortable doing that now. But it means that everybody else in the raid has to see ahead of time where we're going. So we both try to run together to the same point and see who's picked the better spot and go with that. Again, when we get to that point, sometimes we'll go clockwise, sometimes we'll go counterclockwise, and I think the raid is also kind of getting an assessment of which is the clearer way to go, where there's less seepage on the floor. One last comment I wanted to make, though, about when he's doing that beam in the middle. People are, I think, nervous about getting into the arcane seepage, those little blobs on the floor, for good reason. They do ticking damage. But I think something you have to learn really early on in the heroic mode is that the beam is going to one-shot you. The arcane seepage will slowly kill you. So if you have the choice between running through seepage or trying to avoid seepage, but it slows you down and gets you caught in the beam, you always want to run through the seepage. Better to take a couple little shots of damage than to get decimated by that beam.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point.
And he brought up another thing that I don't think Lorelei or I talked about, which, the arcing bonds can get on DPS as well. And one thing that I did this week that I hadn't done previously was I got arcing bonds on me with someone else. I don't even remember who it was. And I and the two of us got together. Actually, I think it was Dord, now that I think about it. And I just said, okay, I looked at the timer. I saw he was about to jump to the center in about 5 seconds, and I was like, all right, let's go now. And so I said, just follow me. And so I started running to get in position where we would be safe early on while I had the arcing bonds with another player. And it just was like, hey, follow me out to the middle. because we were already connected, kind of thing. Because it usually happens just as the boss is jumping to the middle. So just be aware of that DPS. You might get arcing
Yeah.
bonds and have to hang out with somebody else.
And that's something that tanks have had to do in several different instances over time, so we're kind of used to that. But if it's new for you as a DPS, yeah, you got to be watching for that.
Yeah, and I would say for melee, when you get that, especially with a healer who's in the back, don't be the one to say, well, they're going to have to move to me. Move to them as well, because they're trying to keep us alive, and I would rather stop my DPS and move to a healer and let them keep doing their job.
Well, and I don't
Right.
think it
Good advice.
necessarily. I don't think it necessarily has to be a healer. I think it should just be a rule. If even announce it before the fight starts. If you get arcing bonds, you guys come together, come to each other.
Yeah.
Because even a ranged and a melee, the melee is not going to want to move because they'll get out of range. But if they meet us halfway, we can definitely move back in because range can come in closer. But it's that closing the distance. You're
Right.
cutting that distance in half and that time in half for the range to get to you by going to them. So yeah, definitely that's what I wanted to mention. So it was nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it.
I think too, the farther apart you are, the more damage you take. So you don't want to spend much time far apart.
Correct.
Yeah. And as a ranged, when I get hooked to a melee, assuming they run out to me, I'm cognizant of the fact that they can't really contribute to the DPS unless we get close. So when they reach me, I just keep running towards the boss and have them go right back to the boss, and I try and get them right back there because I can fight in melee range. So I usually fight at range because I'm arranged, but I'll head right back to the boss, to accommodate what they need.
Yep. All right, Tap. Your take from a healing aspect on what you do for Trilliax.
So the healers have to deal with the same type of mechanics that the DPS and the tanks do. We still have the sterilize that we need, that we can get on us. We still get the arcing bonds. We still are able to get the cakes if we need to. As a matter of fact, in normal, we don't so much have to go for the cakes, but in heroic, where we can only eat one, we try to be cognizant of, okay, there's still cakes up, but we hear people can't eat them. Oh, I've already got one. And so the healers, should be out there looking for the cakes too, but also trying to keep focus on keeping, everybody alive. So it's a little bit more of a challenge in that respect, because we do have to stop our healing to help out in those things. But if all of those mechanics are done correctly, then people aren't going to be taking damage. It's not going to be raid-wide damage from things exploding and all that stuff. I do have to say, I noticed in this last fight we had that there was less of the mess on the floor, so it was kind of nice to be able to go out when Trilliax is doing his circle thing and not have so much of the blobs on the floor, so that we didn't have to heal as much. But like you guys said, that's much better than going through that than getting one shot like some of us healers do. So,
Don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. So, it's more of a challenge, but, staying, out of the middle, staying, with the DPS and keeping up the heals. Our job doesn't change that much, but we have to be more cognizant of helping out more on the stuff we don't usually do, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The arcing bonds, like I said, I'm glad you guys brought that up, because it can be a little bit of a challenge when you're, especially if it's a melee, you're trying to get in there close, but there's also stuff being laid out all over the floor, and you don't really want your healers to die either. So
Well, and this whole part of the podcast is about what we do and the steps that we take. Where we are the ones saying, okay, you guys should come together, even if it's a melee. Stop meleeing, come to a range, come to the healer. When you get arcing bonds. Now, your raid group may not do that, or may not have that, being able to suggest that to everybody, because not all raid groups are like us. We're pretty close. we kid each other a lot, and we all get along really well. There's some people that might take offense to, a melee going, "Oh, I'm not leaving." I mean, it's all different people and different attitudes. So this was what works best for us. So,
Yeah.
and that's what we're talking about.
And I mean, not for nothing, we usually have 4 druids, and I believe all of us have tranquility and run, and that's a big asset, in a fight like this, where we may be running around and grabbing a cake or running around the boss and trying to not get hit by his beam, that we do have 4 tranquilities that we can use while we're running around. So, like you said, that's what works for us.
Yep. So unfortunately, we're not going to have enough time to talk about Star Augur because we still need to cue the music. It's time for Lorelei's Pet Battle Minute.
Hi. Today, I thought what I'd do is do a little 3-part thing about how you can power level a pet from level 1 to 25 in 3 pet battles. So, this week I'm going to talk about going back out to Mists of Pandaria. You will need your safari hat. You will need to stop by your garrison or the pet shop in Dalaran and pick up some pet treats that give you a 50% increase in experience, and lesser pet treats, which give you a 25% experience increase. And just pick up some flawless battle training stones, which add a level, because depending on what your pet does, you may have to just use that one stone to get you up to 25. All right, so the first thing you do is you're going to go up to the Thundering Pandarian Spirit, who is found in the mountains above the Horde Temple in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. You'll need to take 2 level 25 rabbits with you that have a speed trait. Start with your first rabbit, use Flurry, followed up with Dodge, and then spam Flurry until the enemy pet is dead. When the second pet comes out, use Dodge, Flurry, and follow up with Burrow. If you're lucky, you can take out your first 2 enemy pets with your first rabbit. If not, bring out your second rabbit, use Dodge right away, and then Scratch. When the second enemy pet dies, you'll be facing the rat. Bring out your level 1 pet. The rat will use Stone Skin, so you won't take any damage this round, and immediately sub out for your leveling pet for your rabbit. The rat's going to use Burrow, so use Dodge to avoid the damage, and when he reappears, use Scratch until the rat has 1 round left on his Stone Skin. Then Burrow, rinse and repeat until the rat's dead, and your level 1 pet will be level 14. So I'll continue next week with the second battle, and then you'll be able to level pets up very quickly.
Very cool. The whole time you're talking about the rabbits, I've got one thing in my mind. Monty Python's the Holy Grail.
What, behind the rabbit? It is the rabbit. You silly sod! What? You got us all worked up! Well, that's no ordinary rabbit. That's the most foul, cruel and bad-tempered rodent you ever set eyes on.
You tit! I saw my arm and I was so scared.
Look, that rabbit's got a vicious streak a mile wide. It's a killer.
Get stuff.
He'll do you a treat, mate.
Oh, yeah? Manky Scots git.
I'm warning you.
What's he do? Nibble your bum?
He's got huge, sharp... he can leap about... Look at the bones!
Oh, those rabbits
Just a
are
harmless
awesome.
little bunny. It's a little fluffy. He's
It's a
got
little
big
bunny.
teeth and jumps. Oh, yeah.
And they're so cute, and they just tear things up.
Yeah. The Bunny of Doom. All right. We got more music for you.
Getting Thieves with Joe Bowie.
Sometimes players might miss out on a powerful spell or ability that they can be using simply because they didn't realize they had it in the first place. Recently, Blizzard has implemented a feature that makes it a lot easier to see if there's a spell or ability that you're not using. If you open your spellbook and abilities list, it will highlight any spell or ability that is not currently assigned to one of your toolbars. Should you find one that you're not using, look to see how that spell or ability works and try and work it into your rotation. The default key binding for opening your spellbook and abilities list is the P key. Otherwise, it can be opened by clicking the icon that looks like a book on your toolbar. Keep in mind that if a spell or ability comes from a talent or from gaining a rank on your artifact weapon, it will not show up in your spellbook and abilities list until you have that talent selected or you've acquired that rank in your artifact weapon. It is also possible that you have a spell or ability on your toolbar, but you simply aren't using it. Something that might alert you to a spell or ability that is going unused is to take a look at the information from a player who uses this. To take a look at the information from a player who uses the same class and spec as you that is getting better numbers in your DPS meter, like Recount, Scata, and Details. If you notice they are using a spell or ability that you're not, that is a good clue that you might want to work that spell or ability into your rotation. And if you do find there is a spell or ability that you're not currently using, don't feel bad about it. World of Warcraft is a complex game, and it's easy to miss something. So make sure you're using all the abilities you should, and keep getting those deeps. Oh, and by the way, the Master is back, and things need to be kept tidy.
Epistle.
Well, I just got to respond to that and go, I looked on my toolbar and discovered, hey, there's one I'm not using. It's called Contemplation. It allows you a moment of peace as you kneel in quiet contemplation to ponder the nature of the light. I guess I don't use that much in raids. In this week's Come At Me Tanking Minute, I want to talk about something that maybe a lot of people do or maybe even thinking about but haven't committed to it, but I would really encourage you to. I would say you need to consider key bindings for the win. Or FTW, as some people say. What's a key binding? Well, if you haven't worked with them before, basically it's remapping your keyboard so that each letter corresponds to a game command. So, for example, Consecrate is one of my abilities, and oddly enough, I've actually got it keybound to C. What I've done is I've set up all my key bindings in a way that really makes sense to me so that in an instant, in a second, I could just click any key and get the result that I'm looking for. One hint though, if you've ever been a touch typist, so where you're trying to type things and you use all your fingers rather than just sort of the hunt and peck that a lot of people do, you may want to consider not using the standard movement keys. So by default, Warcraft uses A, S, D, and W as movement keys. And then I think it's Q and E for side moving. It's been so long, I haven't even bothered using those for the longest time. What I've done instead, and people have used different strategies for this, and you can find lots of examples online. As a tank, I've set up my keys bound to offensive and defensive keys. So my offensive keys are the ones that are maybe active mitigation, but they're the AoE attacks, they're the individual target attacks. They are basically above the keys on the higher levels of the keys, so Q, W, ERT, that sort of area. And the defensive keys, the general using all the time kind of keys, I put down on the bottom row Z, X, C, and V, the things that actually help keep me alive. One of my heals, for example, self-heals, is a T. I use that every so often, but I want to have it sort of handy. Now, one of the things you can do to get yourself some more space, I say if you're a touch typist, that you could try is instead of the A, W, S, D default keys, shift them over so that your movement keys become S, D, F, and E. Suddenly, your little finger becomes useful in key clicking, which gives you another 4 buttons off to the left side. I did this a couple of years ago. It was a real pain for about 2 or 3 days. And after that, suddenly I had a world of extra keys that I could play around with. So what I've also done, one extra little bonus you might want to consider doing, I've got my frequently used but still sort of emergency keys up on my top row. So the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've tended to use those as my, I don't want to accidentally hit them keys, but you know, anything on the middle rows you tend to hit more by accident, even unintentionally. But I want to have always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 available for that little reach when I need something in an emergency. So as a tank, my huge self-heal is a number 1. My charge, my quick motion key, is 2. My taunt is a 3. My 4, I kind of cheat and use it as a little bit of an AoE damage, but then my 5 is my stun. So those are things that are used not quite as frequently, but I've pushed them up a little bit. But it's easy to get to them because they're all right there. easy peasy. Some things I use less often, I might move off to on my screen, so you can kind of click from there to get some of those abilities that are less frequently used, not an ongoing fight kind of thing. Maybe it only happens once every couple fights or something. Blessing of Freedom, for example, I would tend to put that way off to the side where I can get it if I need it, but it's not something I'm using all the time in a fight. Now, if you do this, you'll know it's working for you if you go and play an alt in a raid and you find yourself immediately trying to heal yourself using an emergency key on your other tune. It's become so much of your muscle memory, it's just automatic. And that kind of automatic reaction can be the difference between getting that massive heal and saving yourself at a critical moment, or taunting off a mob at an essential time, and not being able to do. So absolutely, set up your keyboard in a way that you can instantly have an instant reaction and a split-second save for your raid. And that's Come At Me, a Taking Minute.
Very cool. And we've got some more music for Tapachino.
I know you've suffered. I'm here to heal you with my stuff. The jungle's loveless, but I'm a druid with a heart.
Okay, this is Tapachino and the Tap into the Healing Minute. Tonight I'd like to talk about small, medium, and big heals. Knowing when to use your different types of heals is important, especially when it comes to mana management and keeping your party alive. If there's little damage going on, you don't want to be using a big heal, as they usually have a cooldown of several minutes, and then when you really need it, it's not going to be ready. Using small heals as fillers, or to get a free heal to proc, maybe all you need is you wait for the damage to start getting heavy. Medium heals can be used in that in-between stage as damage is starting to build, but it's still manageable. And of course, when things are getting heavy and your tank or your party has multiple people taking a lot of damage, heavy heals are the way to go. Whichever situation you find yourself in, think about which type of heal will work best to keep people alive and keep your mana from running out. And that is Tapachino's Tap into the Healing Minute.
Awesome. It's WFN News, Warcraft Fafford News. So, at the time of this recording, the Neither Disruptor is up in the Broken Isles. And it has on it Epic Hunter and again, Seal Your Fate. Now, that's the one where for the 3 days it's up, you can get an extra Seal of Fate for the week. So, got to keep watching those. Make sure you know which one's up and which one's running. Get those extra seals because those tack on with the other 3 that you can get. Now, you can still only have 6, but you can get an extra 3 for the week. So if you really run them down from last week's raid, you can get them up pretty quickly, but it's only when that's there, and those are random. So next up should be the Mage Tower, and it's going to have Fell Treasures and Reputable. Your reputation with the Army Legion is up by I believe it's 30%. So, yeah, that's pretty awesome. All right, I think, guys, that we have reached our limit on time, and we're going to call it an episode. So, guys, everybody listening to us, our fans, thank you very much for listening to us. We really enjoy bringing this podcast to you. I'm sure the others agree. And
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
And we'll see you next week.
Good night.
See you, folks.
I kissed the north.